Guys, welcome back to Before the First Cast. Happy Friday. As you can tell, I have a special guest with me, and we do not have our normal background. Welcome into my home. Um, I want to introduce my wife to you. I'm going to let her do a little introduction about herself, and then we're going to take this and go and do a little Q&A session. So, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Savannah, and for my job, I'm a first grade teacher. Um, and then I'm also the mom of an almost 2-year-old next week.
Yes, a lovely 2-year-old. So I want to start by telling our viewers and our fans how we met. So if you want to explain how we met a little bit.
So we met like any traditional young couple these days. We met on Hinge, and I was teaching, and we had both kind of been on and off the dating sites here and there. And then I just happened to kind of like hop back on Hinge. I'd been on for a while, hop back on, see what was going on there. And I saw that Calvin had messaged me or like responded to one of my prompts and didn't just respond to a picture of me because that was what I would get a lot and it just got on my nerves. But he actually answered like one of like or responded to one of the prompts that you had to write on there. And so I was like, well, I guess we'll see what he's about. And fun fact, I was nervous and hesitant to go on a date with him because he was not like the normal type that I had dated. And I had a conversation with my mom after church over lunch one day, and I was like telling my mom that like I had matched with Calvin and stuff like that. And I was like, but I don't really know if I kind of want to go on a date with him or not. I was like, because he's just so different than anyone that I've ever dated before. And my mom wanted to see a picture of him. And my mom told me that I was being ridiculous and that he was fine and that I should give him a chance. And now I'm glad I did. But yeah, I don't think if it would have been for my mom to encourage me, I didn't know if the first date would have ever happened.
So you're saying I shot my shot. You had to ask your parents or your mother that if she approved of me.
Well, no, it was that like you were just a lot different than the guys like my normal typical guys. Like for instance, I thought that I needed to be with someone that was like 6 foot, but Calvin's not 6 foot, even though he's taller than me. And my mom was like, "You're being ridiculous because he's taller than you. That's really all you need. You do not need to be with someone that's 6 foot." But yeah.
So segueing out of how we met. So we obviously went on our first date at Panera. We talked to each other. I thought you were taller than you actually were, but that's just another story. So from there on, we went on a few more dates, and then I decided I had the bright idea to do what?
So we went on our first date in end of January, and then we became the official couple in beginning of February of 2021. And then in March of 2021 is kind of the weather was kind of like what it was this week. It was warm, and so Calvin invited me out on his boat with his best friend. So it was three of us on a fishing boat,
A
or
bass
a bass
boat.
boat. Sorry, bass boat. And we had been out all afternoon. We went out after church. And it was the last class. It was about like 4:35. And I had asked Calvin when I was like when we were going to be done. And Calvin said, hang on, let me cast one more time, and then we'll go back to the dock. So or to the ramp. And so he did, but I was sitting in the middle and I had kind of been like laying down or whatever. And Calvin casted and I popped up at just the right time and he cut me with whatever bait was it?
It was a chatterbait.
Okay, got cut in the eyebrow. Um, and so I immediately went like, ow. Oh, and it had like a weight on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the weight got me underneath the eyebrow, and then um the cut was like on the side of my eyebrow. So immediately I went out, pulled my hand away, and there was blood. And so I start freaking out. And so I asked his friend, I was like, how bad is it? Do I need to get stitches? And he said, well, we can take you to Med Express, but they're going to laugh at you. And I said, okay, it's not that serious. Meanwhile, Calvin's over here being like, I got to get back. We got to get back. There's blood everywhere. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, we got to get back. So there was like some blood on the carpet, but I think it was just bleeding a lot because of where I got hit. Because when we got back, they tried to put band-aids on it, but it was just like flopping out in the wind. And so it just wasn't working. So I just kind of had to hold like tissues and gauze and stuff over it until we got back. And then we put a band-aid on it. Calvin throws the bait away and says he's never going to use that bait again because he felt really bad about the whole thing. And then, now, mind you, we had just like newly been a couple. So I was still living at home with my mom and dad. So I called my mom and I said, hey, I'm fine, but, and I told her what happened. And so she's like, okay, do you need to go to the hospital? Do you need stitches? And I was like, no, they told me it really wasn't that bad. So I get home, liquid Band-Aid did the trick. She put some, I made my mom look at it because I was too scared to look at it. But it ended up being a cut like this big. Like it was very small. But the weight bruised me underneath my eyebrow. And so liquid Band-Aid on the cut, it bruised me really bad. I remember I said I was an elementary school teacher. Well, that week was picture week for my class. And so I actually had like a bruised, swollen eyebrow eye for picture day that year. And I remember going to work and people being like, you're still with this guy? And I was like, yeah, it was just a complete accident. But my dad is a tractor trailer driver. And so he wasn't home when everything happened. So he didn't see me for like several days later. And Calvin thought that my mom and dad were going to kill him and never going to let me see him again or whatever. And that they were never going to like him. And so my dad just said, why did you have three people on one boat, on a bass boat fishing? Because he used to have like a little fishing boat. But now he just gives Calvin a hard time about it. But my parents aren't necessarily mad. My dad just said it probably wasn't a good choice.
And tell the fishermen out there, for one, don't have two people on your deck at one time. Two, don't have somebody, if you do have two people on the deck, don't have a person sitting down in the bottom of the boat in the seats, because this could be totally avoided if I just stayed in the back of the boat, but I got greedy and wanted to go to the front. But yeah, so I hit her with a jackhammer, one of the metal blade bait jackhammers, so one of the original ones, and it split her pretty good. The actual blade part of the chatterbait's what cut her eye, and then the weight behind it hit her in the face. But luckily, we didn't have to do an emergency visit. Liquid, like you said, liquid Band-Aid helped out. Thank goodness I had a first aid kit on the boat. I always recommend you guys have a first aid kit on the boat and have a lot of Band-Aids. But yeah, that's kind of where. So on from that, we end up getting engaged in May 2021. And then fast forward to November, we get married November, what's your name? It's 21st of 2021. And our marriage catch hashtag tag thing was Herndon caught a Latimer. Or was it caught? Yeah. And that was a symbolic saying because I actually literally did catch her. But so from then on, kind of jumping back into the story, what happens after that?
So, and also at our wedding, his best man was the guy on the boat with us. And so he also had to jab it in the best man speech for the whole wedding to hear. That was fun. So then we decided that we wanted to kind of plan for a family. We didn't know the struggles that we were going to have. And so it took us quite longer than what we anticipated to have Peyton. And I was actually told that I probably wasn't going to be able to have children. Um, and we were told that in May of 22.
22.
And then I ended up getting pregnant with him in June of 22. So it was totally a God thing. And we're just so grateful to have him. So um, in July, I found out I was pregnant in 22. And then we had Peyton in March. He came 3 weeks early via emergency C-section. I had blood pressure problems and stuff like that. My entire pregnancy developed severe preeclampsia. So it was complete emergency thing. And you might think Calvin might have not have reacted to that well, considering how he reacted when I got hit on the boat. But actually, he was very calm, and we both like got through that together and that sort of thing. So that happened, and then that kind of changed kind of how fishing looked for you.
Well, that was my next question. For those who have children or are married, kind of tell our listeners and viewers what were some things that changed when we got married and when Peyton came along.
So Calvin tournament fish, like when we were dating and stuff, he'd go like at least a few Saturdays, like a month or whatever. But he would kind of go fishing during the day, and then at night we'd like go grab dinner or something. But then at the point that because we dated, engaged, and got married all within a year, during that period of time, he really didn't fish a whole lot just because we had like wedding stuff going on. And then from when we were newlyweds, you still fished tournaments like normal with your fishing partner. Nothing much changed. And then Peyton was born, and I think he was like 2 months old or something. And you fished one tournament, and our son had a lot of stomach problems and constipation and all sorts of things going on
Not
with him.
sleeping.
And so the day that Calvin went fishing, I was at home by myself with Peyton. And I called my mom, and my mom and dad were going to come up and like hang out with me anyway, just to keep me company. And I called my mom and dad crying because like Peyton's screaming, his stomach's hurting, he's constipated, he was gassy. We ended up having to get on some like really specific formula for him. But it was just really hard. And I was postpartum. And so if you know anything about that, hormones are crazy and stuff like that. And so I remember being like, this is really hard to do this. And I told Calvin when he got home. I didn't bother him when he was out on the water, but I told him when he got home that night after my parents had left and everything that that was just really hard, and that I think we needed to kind of reevaluate what that was going to look like. And so we compromised on, I think you did like one tournament. It started out being one tournament a month, but then it ended up being, just because like we were busy and stuff, ended up being like every other month, I think is what we compromised on. I didn't want him to give it up completely because I knew that was his outlet. But also we had a child with some pretty specific needs that I needed help with, that it was just hard to handle, at least while he was young or like little and stuff like that. And then a little bit after that, fishing kind of paused for a while. And then we realized that your boat necessarily wasn't getting as much use. And then, as we all know, the economy was terrible, and we're recovering from that. And because of that, we had to make the decision to sell your boat, which we didn't take lightly. But it was kind of an ongoing conversation between the two of us. And then Calvin came home one day and said, like, I really think we need to sell the boat. We're just at a point now that family is just kind of more important than fishing, and that you would figure out fishing and what that looked like. So we ended up having to sell the boat. Obviously, that was a hard thing for Calvin to do. But now you kind of just tag on to, like, people ask you to go fishing with them and you just kind of like jump on with them and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I guess all the people are going to want to know, is there an opportunity for me to get another boat at some point?
We say that when the kids were older, like when we were done like having kids and the kids were older, um, and that sort of thing. And then you've kind of like been like, yeah, probably when I'm retired, which like we had talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people that are in like your fishing community and stuff like that. And they even said that they had to like put like a hard pause on it when they were raising kids and family and stuff like that. And so I just think it's one of those sacrifices that you make.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you kind of shift your hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm obviously blessed to have this platform as well. Thanks to Brian and Basscast Radio for pulling me on and let me do some writing and do some videos and podcasts for him. Um, this is kind of the way I get to still fish, but not fish. It's not like I've completely stopped fishing. I do have a few people that will take me out.
Mhm.
Possibly thinking about joining a club to kind of do that for this year. Um, but if you're a boater and need a partner, I'm always available. Um, at discretion, that is. Um, but for I kind of want to go into a question to the our female audience. So when what how hard is it for say the mother wife um, when their significant other is fishing say constantly 8 hours a day and always on the road? What do you think some struggles of that hurt or that individual would be?
So every relationship is different and that sort of thing, and every family dynamic is different. I know some wives are like, "Great, go out, have fun, leave me by myself." I'm not one of those people. I don't like being left alone. I especially when Peyton was like like baby. I did not like being left alone with him. Obviously now he's two, and so if Calvin goes fishing, and neither of our parents are available or my friends aren't available and that sort of thing, I can take Peyton out somewhere and like do something with him or whatever while you're gone. Um, However, I think just from our standpoint, we both work full time during the week. And so the weekends is really our sweet spot to not only see each other, but to spend time with Peyton, because the amount of hours we get during the week with him is like 3 hours max. And so we always talk about that if you fished on a Saturday, that would take 8 hours away from our family time. Like I said, obviously, sometimes, in like the professional world or whatever, the wives will travel with their husbands and that sort of thing so that they're, close by. Um, but I think in our world of things, it's just really difficult when you think about sacrificing that whole time. Now, I'm not saying that I am against Calvin going every once in a while. I'm not, because, like I said, it's his hobby, it's what he needs to do. But we also only get to raise Peyton one time.
Mm.
And we're only going to be this age one time. And so I also think that if you prioritize fishing over your family and over your marriage, it's eventually going to suffer. And that's one thing we didn't want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My three priorities is faith, family, then fishing. In that order. Um, and we made that very clear
Mm-hmm.
when we got married. That's half the reason, or that's mostly the reason I don't fish on Sundays. That's something I've done since I've got into fishing. Sunday is my church day, my reset day. Um, that's why I don't fish 2 day tournaments usually, unless it's Friday, Saturday, or something. Um, because I keep Sunday as my, that's my day to be with my family, be in church in the Word, um, and just kind of refresh and reset. Um, but yeah, so my last question for you is, what is some advice or words of wisdom you can give to our viewers, our listeners about being in a relationship, being married, having children, will and with a spouse that fishes, whether it be professionally, whether it be semi-professionally, or just a weekend warrior.
I think you should set the what you're okay with, your kind of your boundaries, your ground rules early on. And that's one thing that Calvin and I did. We pretty much like once we realized, like it didn't take us long to realize that like we wanted to get married and that sort of thing. And so once we realized that like we were in it for the long haul, we sat down and we kind of did our list of non-negotiables and when it came to fishing. And so Calvin and I mentioned non-negotiable was that Sundays he wasn't going to fish. Um, he also, it was a non-negotiable with that at least one Saturday out of the month when we were dating and even married and being newlyweds and stuff like that, you weren't going to fish. And in the days that you were, if there was a Saturday you were fishing, you made sure there was like no family event going on, nothing major going on. And then we'd always meet up later on for dinner. And so I think no matter what stage you're in, you need to set those rules and those boundaries and stick to those boundaries because it's really easy. It would have been really easy for Calvin to just been like, okay, those are the boundaries, but they don't really matter. And if you do that, then the other person, specifically the one that's not fishing, is going to feel like they're not validated and that they're not important enough. So I think that's number one. Number two, when they start talking about fishing, you just listen to them. Even though sometimes I have no idea what he's talking about, I still listen because I know this is like his thing. And like I want him to listen to what I like to do and my thing. And so just really listening and then supporting them in whatever capacity that would be. So I know like when he does fish, I like check in every now and again to see like how they're doing, if they've caught anything and that sort of thing. And then he'll send me like the pictures of the fish and stuff like that if they have caught anything.
Most of the time, not.
And so I think that's too is like make your partner feel like even when they are fishing, that you are interested in what they are doing. Um, because, and I always got nervous and get nervous when Calvin's on the water just because we all know that the water can be unsafe and that sort of thing, like boating accidents happen and stuff like that. And so sometimes like when we had went like long periods of time I hadn't really talked to him or whatever, I would like give him a phone call just to make sure that they were still okay because he had been on the, like there had been a tournament at one point, it was like thunder and lightning and everything and pouring the rain and they were like hunkered down underneath a dock and lightning was just striking all around them. And so in situations like that, I like checked in on him because I was just really nervous. And so I think that's another thing um, to understand too, the person that's not doing it is going to have those worries and those fears and to not think they're crazy for thinking that.
Yes, and I believe that tournament was a bass cast tournament in April that we got caught in a monsoon. That was probably the scariest tournament I've ever been a part of. But we did catch 5 bass limit that day, which was pretty good. But as we segue to the end of this, again, I really appreciate you coming on and taking your time out after a long day with children and putting our kid to sleep. Um, and now, in the end, we're still together. Nothing, nothing that's happened in our long story that has brought us apart. And I do agree with the advice that you gave. I think it's really important to be not only interested but involved, even if you don't even know what you're talking about. But you're willing to learn. Also, that's a big thing too. If your spouse, girlfriend, whatever they are, significant other isn't really into fishing, you could always have a way in or a way to get them to not understand, but like understand it's really important to you. I know in my household, every Saturday during the Elite Series when it's on, I have it on, and you might not like it, but Peyton and I sit there and just kind of watch it. Um, and you probably be wanting to watch something else. But that is my way of learning as well. But again, talk to your spouse about, you know, important things like we talk about, like the boundaries, like she said. And, you know, it's important for the spouse to be interested and be supportive because, you know, again, if your spouse isn't supportive, you're really not going to enjoy your time on the water. Um,
And agree on the amount of money that you're going to spend on fishing things
that is a big thing.
because this sport is not cheap. I feel like every time we turn around, it's like, I was like, I need this. I'm like, okay, how much is that going to cost? And it's not a small amount.
Well, it was really not that cheap when I had the boat.
No, it's like another
I felt like
car.
everything was breaking and it was just thousands of dollars upon thousands of dollars.
Yes.
But again, I really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
I would really want to do more of these. Guys, if you like this, if you like the Q&A and just us talking up here, um, definitely comment. If you don't follow before the first cast, or definitely subscribe. Helps us out. Until the next time, we will see you guys on the next before the first cast.
And if you have any questions that you want us to address, drop them down below so we can
Yes.
answer them.
And you guys have a great weekend. See you guys.